The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. 3 great stories on today's bonus show. It starts with Bill Nye the Science Guy. I used to watch Bill Nye the Science Guy when I was a kid. And I remember liking it.
Yeah, my science teacher in 7th grade was her relative, so she would show us clips from the show all the time.
Wait, your science teacher was her relative?
Was
his relative
of him.
She was his relative. I see what you're saying. Got it. Didn't know if maybe I was misgendering Bill Nye for a second. So Bill Nye went to the State of the Union address yesterday. He was there alongside the Trump administration's nominee to head NASA. And this is angering a lot of scientists. There are scientists who are saying that Bill Nye, by going to the speech with Oklahoma Republican Congressman Jim Bridenstine, is sort of endorsing the selection by showing up there, even though Bill Nye and the Planetary Society said accepting the invitation is not an endorsement of the administration or the policies. But the scientific community is not pleased with this. They're not happy with Bridenstine. He's a Tea Party Republican. He's a Tea Party conservative who has denied the climate change realities. He has that's the type of guy he is, and he's going to lead NASA. And if you're Bill Nye and you show up and you sit next to him as his guest, it doesn't matter if you say it's not an endorsement of Trump. I sort of agree with what the scientists are saying. This is not a good look.
Yeah, and I don't know if Bill Nye got cucked in this scenario because I don't think Donald Trump mentioned science at all during that whole hour-plus speech. I don't think there was a single moment. Maybe in the end, in passing, he said that we have to revamp our science and technology, but he certainly didn't discuss space exploration. He didn't discuss climate change. That's what you got to expect in 2018 from a State of the Union.
And the argument made about Nye is that it doesn't matter what he believes, that this is a tacit endorsement of Bridenstine's climate denial, of Trump's non-policy on so many of these important science issues. And the allegation is Bill Nye saw this as an opportunity to grow his own brand just by being there. And it was a selfish move. And the right thing to do as a scientist would be not to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. You can attend the State of the Union and no one thinks of it as an endorsement of the president's policies. I mean, the room, half of it is filled with Democrats. Right? And some of them choose to boycott, but not the majority.
He was an invited guest of a non-science Republican. That's the problem.
Yeah. And maybe he's trying to bridge a gap.
I think the best thing would have been to sneak in a protest poster. You know, that would have been historically viral. And the truth is, who cares in the end if Jim Bridenstine ends up mad at you? And I know that there is significant security. I'm just wondering, would it be possible? Like the way I actually started thinking through, okay, if you actually bring in a big poster, security is going to find it, they're going to look at it, and they're going to confiscate it and probably end up not letting you in to the State of the Union address. But one of the big advents of the printing press and movable type was that someone figured out you can take a big piece of paper and you can fold it into a multi-page pamphlet, right? This was a big thing.
It's like Gutenberg stuff.
Exactly, because you can take, instead of needing multiple pieces of paper, and paper was really hard to come by at the beginning of the printing press, you can take a single sheet, and if you print in the right orientation, when you fold it, you end up, somehow with a pamphlet. What if they had created a decoy pamphlet that appeared to be, a guide to DC museums or something like that. But when you unfold it on one side, it's basically a protest poster that Bill Nye could have held up. Do you understand how viral and historic it would have been to do a live protest in the House chamber during the State of the Union address?
It would have been pretty scandalous, though, especially because if you think back to one of Obama's State of the Union addresses, there was that congressman in the audience who yelled, "You lie."
But that's
and
not
that was
what
a
I'm
big
saying.
deal. I know that's a congressman and this isn't an elected official, so maybe the public would perceive it differently. But I don't know. I mean, it would be polarizing to say the least.
I would have loved it. And hopefully somebody will think about it in the future. And again, my guess is that if you are going through security and you show security your pamphlet of a guide to DC museums, they're not going to make you fully open it up. in order to see that the backside, for example, is a protest poster or something like that. I think it would work.
Bill Nye is already a controversial figure. I mean, he's getting flack now from the scientific community. He's
Might as
getting
well have
flack
done
from
it.
the right wing.
Would have loved it.
He took flack when he had that creationism debate with Ken Ham.
Yeah.
It looked as if it was like an issue with even footing, right? Like both sides have validity when they don't.
Right. It was sort of legitimizing a guy who believes literal nonsense up there with a guy who just says, hey, I am resting my beliefs on the best assessments of the scientific community at this point. There's a lot of news coming out from Iran where a bunch of Iranian women have been taking off their headscarves in public places to protest the law that says in public women do have to be veiled. And these images have started appearing on social media. A lot of the women have been arrested and the protests have continued to spread. And it all started back in December when one woman, Vida Mohavid, was arrested after removing her headscarf during a wave of anti-regime, anti-government protests. She was freed on Sunday, and these have been opening up. I think that listen, I'm against the forcing of women to be veiled, and I know there are people who say, David, you can't impose your values on other cultures. What's right for your culture might not be right for those other cultures, and there are women who like the headscarf, which I think is just such a problematic statement to even get into, and we've talked about that. But I support these protests because if it's these women who want to do this, then they should be allowed to do it, and I also believe in free speech and the ability to peacefully protest. Not wearing a headscarf is a peaceful protest. My only concern is that they're going to be really harshly punished and that's not going to be good at all.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a purely democratic society in Iran. It's not like they're voting for what the dress code policy is going to be.
That's right.
They have to do it, and they don't really have a choice. So, yes, you can impose your cultural perspective on them.
I have a friend whose father is Iranian, not Lewis. So former producer Lewis's dad is Iranian.
Yep.
But Lewis and I have another friend who's a woman, and her dad is Iranian. And she talked about how when she went to Iran to visit, she flew, I believe it was LA to London, and then London to Tehran. And when they landed in London, when they got on the plane to go from London to Tehran, and I think it was on Iranian Airways, she had to put on a veil, which she's not ever worn. And that on her first visit to Iran, she actually wore it there. Now, if I recall correctly, on her second visit, apparently things had loosened a little bit where non-Iranian women are not required to wear it. So she could just wear her normal clothes, and it's understood that she has an American ID, and you're not held to the same standards, even though she kind of is Iranian in the sense that her dad is Iranian.
And also, it's probably dangerous not to wear the headscarf because people on the street may not recognize that you're not from there, right?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Let's talk about milk that's not really milk. The non-dairy milk movement has grown in the United States over the last, what would you say, 10 years or so?
Even longer.
12, 15 years. You've got your soy milk. You've got your almond milk. You've got, what else?
Rice milk.
Rice milk.
Hemp milk. Coconut milk.
Yep.
Peanut milk is coming around. Cashew milk. Could go on.
Cashew milk is vile. I actually tried that once. Anyway, there are questions about what do you gain with these milk alternatives and what do you lose? And that's been a criticism of some replacement products, like some of the meat replacements that are out there. Not some of the more recent ones, but some of the earlier ones. In order to not be real meat, oftentimes they were being stuffed with additives that, while, quote, natural, are not necessarily nutritionally valuable ingredients. And that's sort of been a question around some of these alternative products for a long time. So McGill University did an interesting study comparing the most popular plant-based milks on the market, which are almond, soy, rice, and coconut milk, exclusively unsweetened varieties. That's something, coconut milk often is sweetened.
Oh, yeah.
And so that makes it not a great comparison because it's got a bunch of sugar in it.
Yeah, and you can choose like the vanilla option or the original. Got to go with the original, though.
Original all the way, no question about it. And in any case, soy milk has been found to be the healthiest of these four unsweetened versions of non-dairy milk, and it's a result of the more balanced nutritional profile. Coconut milk, for example, is not as balanced. Soy milk has the best balance, apparently, of protein and phytonutrients. And there have been questions about the healthfulness of soy in the past, and we've talked about issues of estrogen response from soy, so on and so forth. But according to this study, on balance, soy milk is the healthiest of those 4 milks. Are you surprised?
No, not really. I mean, it depends on what nutritionist you go to, right? Because they'll recommend a different dietary plan for you. But soy milk far and away exceeds the amount of protein as compared to other milks.
Yes,
I mean, I think it has like 9 grams of protein per serving, which is pretty good. And do you still do the dairy milk thing? Are you still on that? Yeah.
Oh,
whole milk, right?
I tend to go with whole milk. Yeah, from what I've read, the sort of benefits of the balance of the fat that's in whole milk is better overall than like 2% or skim. And, you know, to be honest, like I'm so used to whole milk at this point that every once in a while when I have skim milk, it just feels very empty. It feels, it's just not the right thing for me. It's just not. So I've been going with the whole milk. And the whole milk works really well when you froth the milk for cappuccino type drinks. I like the way that the whole milk frothes versus like a 2% or a skim milk.
Did you say that you once witnessed someone having a rice milk cappuccino, and you were borderline offended by it?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, okay.
Offhand. I mean, if I mentioned it, if I mentioned it, it's true, but I don't remember that offhand.
All right, this is a very vegan point, I guess.
Yeah.
But isn't it kind of weird that humans drink the milk of another animal and also drink milk past the point of our infancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a common thing that comes up. Like most mammals only drink milk during infancy. Yeah. And that's it.
From their own kind.
From their own kind. Yeah. No, it doesn't bother me. And it's not just cows, right? I think that part of the idea is we've taken, of all the species, we've decided we're going to drink cow milk. But, you know, buffalo mozzarella is sort of like one of the most popular cheeses in many parts of the world.
Goat milk is big. Yeah.
Goat milk is big. Sheep's milk cheeses are really, really big. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. Like when I think about, if I think about eggs too much, sometimes I'm like, oh, is this technically, it's not an abortion, but it's an unfertilized egg that could have become a chicken at some point. Yeah. It doesn't really bother me, but if I think about it a lot, it does. But the milk thing doesn't bother me at all.
Do you think that it's okay for these plant milks to be called milk?
We've talked about this before.
Really milk?
It's not milk, so I don't really care what you call it. I really don't. Like rice milk, okay, which by the way, rice milk, the nutritional values are through the floor. I mean, it's just terrible. It seems that rice milk is the worst one. And if you think about rice also, again, a more complex grain rice has more nutritional value than like white rice, but it follows, if you think of white rice as sort of this empty carb, then it follows logically that rice milk also would not have a great nutritional value.
I guess that's a good defense against allergies, though. I've never had rice milk, but apparently so.
I don't call it milk if you want. I just think it's funny that like it's funny because it's just not milk.
Right. I think the companies, the dairy companies that are suing to protect the name of milk just so they don't have to compete on the same grounds as the other companies, I don't think that their argument has merit, especially because words do take on new definitions over time.
Sure.
It's happening with milk. Now you can call it, you know, the derivative of something that comes from plants, I guess, if you milk it. And, you know, even meat, the same thing. You talk about like opening up a coconut. What do you find in there? The meat of the coconut.
Sure.
You get to the meat of the issue when we're discussing things.
Well, the meat of the issue is a more metaphorical one. I don't know that that's under the same umbrella as calling rice milk milk. But I honestly, I know that the lawsuit from the dairy industry is to protect the brand and to keep making money. There's no doubt about that. I think it is deceptive in that rice milk isn't milk and soy milk isn't milk. But I don't really care. It's not a major issue in my life. I'm more focused on net neutrality and the destruction of, the sort of fabric of internet freedom, for example, than calling rice milk milk.
Well, you take on that stuff, and I'll take on the rice milk thing.
You deal with that issue. That's it for the bonus show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.